My next guest is a freelance reporter whose work has focused on the refugee crisis around the world. She has reported from refugee camps in Greece, Turkey, France, and Lebanon since 2013. Currently, she is conducting a series of interviews and daily check-ins with her friends and contacts around the world about how their lives have been impacted by COVID-19. Please welcome Laura Taglianetti. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, really. So honored. Thank you. I usually start the conversation with the question, what do you believe?
So I believe that everybody wants the same thing. And I really think most disagreement is really misunderstanding. So there are, of course, outliers in that, but in general, I do think that we all want the same thing. And it's just a matter of what the best way to get there is. Like, everybody wants a safe place for their family. And, you know, it really is like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yes.
And I think that's what you see everywhere on both sides of the aisle here. If you look at politics and just everywhere in the world, despite cultural differences and everything else, it's like we're all trying to get to the same place and just having a disagreement on what the means to that end is.
How has that affected, your belief of everyone wanting the same thing? How does that drive you being a journalist?
So I think it's interesting because that's why I feel it's so important to give everybody a voice. Because I do think if you can hear from people who are in the same situations, who are explaining what it is that they want and what they're trying, like what the goal is for them, and to hear that really what they want is the same thing that you want, I think that makes people step back and kind of be more thoughtful about how they then criticize or evaluate different opinions.
Wonderfully said. What prompted you to, because you do this for your work, to begin interviewing people from around the world? How did this begin?
So as soon as the virus broke out, I remember the weekend it first started in New York. I guess that was March 13th, right? That was when everything closed down. And I remember like I was scared and everyone I was talking to was scared, and it was just like, what's going to happen? Like, even the way people talked about this, like the virus sounds like a sci-fi movie, and it was just like so scary. And I remember at the time I called a friend who was in Italy and I asked him, because they were ahead of us with infections, whatever, like their lockdown started on March 8th and everything was shut by March 11th. So this was like 2 days before where we were about to have everything shut. And the Prime Minister Conte just shut everything down there. And, you know, I just asked him, how is everything there? What's it like? What's happening? And he was in Rome. So it wasn't like they weren't in the north where it was hardest hit, but this is still like, he's in Rome and there's no one in the streets, like the fountains, the parks, all these things are empty, you know, and the weather is getting nicer. And he said, you know, it's sad and it was awful to think about what's happening, but he was okay, you know, and he was explaining going out to the supermarket, and he did the same thing, you know, like there was the same like lack of toilet paper everywhere in the world. But then like a few days in, you know, he was in the house, he was catching up with friends that he hadn't had a chance to catch up with, you know, and he was just saying like, don't worry, you know, you're going to be able to get through this and it's going to be fine, you know. And that I thought, I found myself then repeating these conversations I was having to people who were telling me, oh my God, what's going to happen? I'm scared. So then I thought, why don't I put these online? And there was a photograph on the 13th as well. I think that in New York was like the pivotal day. I think that was that Friday.
Yeah.
Taken. And I saw that there's this photographer in Hong Kong, Victor Cheng, and he shared a photo on his story, and it was two shelves like next to each other. And the top one, it was labeled before, and that was taken 3 weeks ago. And it was just like a completely empty shelf. And the one below was labeled today, and everything was fully stocked. You had toilet paper, disinfectant, all the cleaning supplies. And that one underneath, he wrote like, it will be okay. And that was so comforting, I thought, to see someone who had gone through it. And so that really prompted me. I was like, you know what, every time I hear about some crazy law being enacted or like some insane quarantine, I want to put online somebody talking about how that impacted their life in the place. It's like when San Francisco was the first one, like quarantine, and we never use that word here because Cuomo, you know, thought that was like people wouldn't take to the word quarantine, but in reality, the restrictions were the same, right?
Yes.
We're thinking like here we don't have quarantine, there they do, but then I'm talking to a friend there and it's the same, right? Like
It's the same.
it's you distancing, you can go out, but there's nowhere to go, right? So I thought that was important and interesting to talk to people. I think it just makes people less afraid to watch other people and their experiences of these things.
Absolutely. Wow. That's very powerful. I mean, in terms of the narrative, what do you think that there's a common thread?
I don't, so in terms of a narrative, I do think people have this idea that it's easier to create a narrative than it really is.
Mm.
Like any of these ideas that I don't know how much of a narrative there really is, but I think the common thread is fear. And it's not just of getting sick. Like people weren't that afraid of getting sick, I felt, especially a lot of people I ended up speaking to were younger just because it did start out as like talking to my friends.
Yeah.
Is more of the fear of like what's going to come and like how the world is going to change. And is this something that we're going to have to prepare for again and see happen again? So I do think the common thread is this just like fear of the unknown. And then the other thing that every single person said, which I thought was amazing, was they all talked about how they had the best healthcare in the world and how everybody knew that. And I thought that was so funny because the first person that said that to me was, he was like, in Italy, everyone knows we have the best healthcare system in the world for this to happen here. And I'm like, nobody thinks that. Like, I don't, and then when we were talking to other places, like I spoke to someone in Venezuela and he was like, well, we didn't want to be in America. We wanted, because the guy I spoke to in Venezuela, their family has houses, everywhere. Because I mean, that's how just the country's structured, right? You have people there who have the ability to do that. And then you just have like a very, very poor people.
Yes.
And they chose to go to Venezuela because he was like, because we trust our hospitals here and we have just like some of the best doctors in the world. And I just think that's amazing how like everyone has so much respect for doctors. How much that's like, I don't know what that, if that you really can't live, if you think that if something happened to you or your family, like you didn't have somewhere to go get healthcare. That I thought was really common, just the respect for and the belief in the healthcare workers.
Wow. It's incredible what they're doing to help all of us. It's very inspiring
And
and
it's selfless. And also the way, I mean, friends, I'm sure like friends who are doctors here, when I talk to them, like just hearing how many families that they have to talk to. And every time they talk to a family, right, it has to be like it's the first time they've had this conversation. And I think their ability to do that and not to get jaded and appear like, every single time is just absolutely incredible. Like a certain type of person, I think, to be a
yeah,
doctor.
absolutely. It's a true vocation for sure. Have you heard, I mean, what are you hearing inside the hospitals in New York City right now? I mean, what's happening currently?
So I think there's still like now I think the numbers have kind of leveled off. They still have patients in the ICU. But what I was most struck by talking to doctors is so they like I feel haven't had time to sit down and think about like what all of this means and like what's happening. I think they're really working on a more like day-to-day thing. And one of the most impressive things, my friend Rue, she works at Montefiore in the Bronx, and I asked her, "Are you scared?" And she was like, there's no use to be scared." So she was like, "I just am not because it'll just make me do my job worse, and there's just no point."
Yeah.
I thought that was amazing.
Amazing. Amazing. True strength. So I really enjoyed the angry prepper. I thought that was
She's self-titled.
quite something. Speaking of doomsday preppers, could you just how did you find him? I guess I don't know. Tell me about how that whole thing happened because I thought that was so brilliant.
So he was funny. So I thought to myself, like, we're all trying to stock up and do all this. So we're all preppers, right? Just some people are more organized, I guess, than the rest. We all ended up going out and trying to buy all this stuff, right? He had just done it months and months before. So I found him. He's a New York City firefighter. His name is James Charles, and he's an urban prepper. And I found that very funny because it's just like unusual, right? Like I'd expect if you're prepping for an end of the world scenario, that's going to be the kind of thing where you live like in Alaska or the
Right.
Sure, but no, like he's in Brooklyn. I also think that's a testament to like New Yorkers
Yeah.
staying here no matter what. This is where you got to be. Like his things aren't like the guy's ready to eat the same can of beans for 1 year, but like he's not going to leave New York, you know?
Yeah.
That was amazing. Like he's such a New Yorker. And I was just shocked by how level-headed he was. Like I thought he was going to be like this guy hoarding machine guns, but it really wasn't like that, right? Like I asked him, he has like a healthy skepticism. Like I asked which news where he gets the news. He's like, you know, I like MSNBC, CNN. He's like, I'll check out Fox sometimes, you know, but then he also checks in with people on the street. So he'll go to the police force and ask like, hey, how many guys are you down? Because that's what he thinks is like, he's really more worried about like civil society breaking down. So, you know, he checks in, but he's not like super paranoid. So the way that I found him is he was featured in this New Yorker article. It was a piece by Michelle Moses. It was called What Drives Preppers. And she writes like many preppers' fears are not based on speculative sci-fi like catastrophes, but on disasters that have already happened. And I guess like that's what he's doing, right? Like he is stocked up, he has food and he's ready, but he's not. He also said, you know, that this isn't Endgame, which I thought was interesting. I don't like treating it like it's the flu, but I don't like people treating it like it's the end of the world because it's not those two things. So that was very interesting to talk to him.
Very interesting. And does he help other people prep?
Yeah, so he has a preppers network, New York Preppers Network. And it's funny, like I thought to myself, like, this is just like adult Boy Scouts. Like they go out and they'll do these like prepper vacation trips where they learn how to like catch food and make the fire and stuff. But it's true, like living in the city, I don't have any of those skills. You know, like it's something.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I was just chatting with a friend of mine, dear friend, and she's like, I've never done the dishes. I don't do my laundry. Like, I'm too busy. And now I have to do all this stuff. And it's just funny how we all are just forced to do everything. It's great. I mean, it's really just getting back to basics, isn't it?
Learning.
What's that?
Funny. We're learning. Like, I wonder how much stuff we're going to keep from this and how much we're going to go back to just like, I don't know if I'm going to eat home more or just like never want to eat home again.
Yeah.
After this.
Exactly. It's like I've got 10 dishes and I'm sick of them already. I know. Soon I'm going to just eating cereal, I think, honestly.
I've like already kind of gotten it.
You're already there? Oh my God. So what tell us about some of the refugees that you spoke to. And I mean, there was one, Parwana Armiri, who is a refugee activist that I thought she was incredible. Can you tell us a bit about her story? And
yeah, so Parwana was amazing. I had worked in that refugee camp before. So I volunteered there right after college in 2013. So I reached out to my friend Antonis. He's a Greek volunteer there. I think he's at the International Organization for Migrants. And I asked if I could speak to him, and he was like, I will speak to you, but I really think you should look at this girl Parwana because she's amazing. So I went to her Facebook page, and she had been making all of these. She'd been doing interviews with people and making videos and writing, putting up poetry about the situation in Greece. And she's incredible. She's from Afghanistan. She's 16 now. She's been in Ritsona for 3 months, but this is a camp on the mainland. And she came from Moria, which is one of the ones on Lesbos, this island. I guess like that's one of the ones we hear most about here because the situation is just horrendous. Like that's where they're coming from, the boats from Turkey. And she's just been telling her own story. She learned English in Afghanistan, but then has been teaching herself because she wasn't able to register for school when she got here or when she got to Greece. And so she's been going around and informing residents of the camp about the dangers of the virus and how they have to wash their hands and helping distribute hygiene packs because all the NGOs had to leave once they put the camp on quarantine. And I mean, I just find her so inspiring and incredible the way she gets up every day. Like she doesn't know like when her asylum claim is going to go through, you know, and I asked her, I was like, well, do you want to be a journalist? And she was like, you know, she was so cute. Like she doesn't want to be a journalist. She wants to be a politician because she thinks that's how you really make more of a difference, which I thought was, and then she apologized like to me. She was like, oh, but I don't want you to think being a journalist doesn't have like impact, you know? And she called me before we did the interview, and she asked for like a little pre-interview, and she was like, well, these are the things I think we should discuss, like blah, blah, blah. And thank you so much. Like, I found you so inspiring. And I was like, you're incredible.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, what she said was that she was encouraging everyone around her to get on social media and try to get the word out about what the conditions are, and the fact that she said that they're all alone. Like you said, the NGOs had to leave.
Yeah. And I think it's hard there because people aren't really getting information either. So you have like a lot of this misinformation spreading on WhatsApp and people not taking the threat of it seriously. And then like you're asking people to stay home, but what's the big problem with refugees, right? Is they don't have a home. So where are they supposed? So when they sealed off the camp, her thought was, how crazy is this? They're trying to keep us from infecting Greece. Like no one cares about what's happening inside of the camp. They don't even have somewhere. She said they don't even have like a medical tent. They can't isolate people, and they're living like these ISO boxes are basically the size of a shipping container, and it's like 8 people living in them with families like whole across all generations. It's unimaginable, like the situation for these, and especially because there's just no end date.
Yeah.
So you have kids who are born in these refugee camps that have never lived anywhere else. I mean, it's just awful.
Awful. And here we are, it's like we have nothing to complain about, right? I mean, it's okay. So we have to make the same meal over again. That's okay. I think we're okay. We're doing fine. Yeah. What is the most, I mean, this is incredibly disheartening to hear these facts of what's actually going on in the world at large. And of course, inspiring stories. Have you specifically heard something that was just so beautifully inspiring?
I thought her story was very inspiring. And then separately from this, I have a good friend who's a journalist, and his dad is in an ICU in the UK. And he put on Twitter the other day, his name is Nicky Wolf. He put on Twitter the other day that him and his brother had reached out to Amazon or whatever, the Audible, and gotten the books to go for free to hospitals so that people who are in there on these ventilators who might not be conscious can have books read to them all the time. And I thought that was so inspiring and so amazing that even in the face of like such hardship that he's going through at the moment, to still be like thinking of other people and how to make this experience better for everyone that has to be going through it. And I also thought it was just so beautiful, the idea of like the fact that stories keep people alive and engaged. Because I mean, I do think storytelling is so incredible and so important.
Yes. Well, your stories are incredible and so important. Everything that you've been doing, talking to your contacts and friends around the world. I mean, what is next for you in terms of your interviews?
So I'm doing tomorrow. I have one from China, and I think he's in Shanghai, but it's a friend of a friend. He was at business school here in New York. He was at Columbia Business School, and he reached out to me, which I thought was amazing. But his biggest thing was that he is just so upset at the discrimination against Asians, everywhere, and especially Asian Americans here. So I'm very excited to talk to him, and I think it's, because we have all these conversations and their governments and their disagreements, and you don't agree with the policies and stuff on a higher level, but like the people who aren't involved in that, like everyone's the same, and it's like people, I don't know, that one I'm very excited to talk to him about, like his perception of just like what's happening. And I love, like, people really come to you. Like most of these interviews, after I started doing them and putting them up, people reach out to me and are like, oh, I want to do one. Because like everybody knows that if they can tell their own story, it's so much more compelling than having someone tell it for them.
Wow. That's so powerful. So powerful. Well, I'm really looking forward to hearing this conversation with your contact tomorrow, and all that you're going to wind up doing here, from here on in. I mean, can you sort of, in this crazy time, what's your sense, or what's your feeling about what will happen?
I don't really know. The thing that like worries me most is how quickly people forget. And I think that that's so necessary to like go on with life. And I think we need that. And that's part of what makes humans like so resilient.
Mm.
But at the same time, like there are these incredible videos circulating, like stupid videos and like great ones about like how we're gonna like remember this human connection and how we stopped using phones and this and we went running. But like I don't know how long that's gonna last. I mean, it's something that's so stupid, and the way that I described it the first time is like, you have like a stuffy nose and it's the worst thing in the world, and then and you can't sleep, but then like as soon as that goes away, you totally forget ever having been like miserable.
Yeah.
And I mean, I hope that we're able to take these things and this feeling of like oneness and how interconnected we are, and remember that like it's really true that nobody's safe until everyone is safe, especially when it comes to like public health. And I don't know, and like it worries me that like we can't see things like climate change happening right in front of us the way this was like one day to the next. So it's so hard for us to prepare for it. Of course you have people taking it seriously, but it's very like it's kind of abstract when it's so far in the future like that.
Yes. Yes. I agree. I hope, I mean, they talk about a second wave come September and October, and it's, what do we do to prepare for that? And will it happen? It's just all questions. Yes.
Yeah, that's the doomsday prepper was very worried about a second
He was
wave.
very worried about that. Yeah.
That was his main.
That was his main concern.
Yeah, so he thinks you should start sampling canned foods now so that when the time comes, you know which ones you're going to be happiest with for the
Oh,
next one.
yes, that's right. That's right.
I laugh, but like the guy, I mean, it makes sense. We're all
Yeah.
preppers, they were saying, and just waiting for,
He has a point.
yeah.
Wow. Well, Laura, thank you. I mean, this,
He's so
thank
much.
you so much. I mean, it's very scary, but you've brought so much light to it. So I thank you for that, and keep doing what you're doing because it's incredibly inspiring.
Thank you so much. I just love that people are open to watching them, and open to discussing them. Like I find there's so much engagement. And even the people that I interview, they constantly like they keep asking me and being like, "Oh wait, well, can we do another one to follow up? Because people need to know this." It's just I love that people love sharing things.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you for initiating that and making it happen.
Thank you so much. I look forward to
Thank,
listening to the rest of this because your series is so interesting.
thank you.